Hello guys and welcome back to episode 3 of the Celebrity Traitors, and today we're going to be jumping in. We've got 2 banishments to talk about and a murder, as well as a very exciting mission and lots of suspicions. Make sure to tune in to see all of my thoughts, and let's just get straight into it, shall we? So we're going to start with voting time. Now, if you tuned into the last episode, you will remember that there were some votes that were given out in the episode. Let me find them. Ruth voted for Kate. Tameka voted for Kate. Alan voted for Niko. Mark voted for Tameka. Niko voted for Tom. Kate voted for Tameka. Joe M voted for Niko. Lucy voted for Niko. Kat voted for Kate. And that was where we were left on the cliffhanger of. So, the voting continued. Stephen voted for Niko. Joe W voted for Tom. Celia voted for Charlotte. Jonathan voted for Niko. Charlotte voted for Niko. Claire voted for Niko. David voted for Niko. Tom voted for Niko. Nick also voted for Niko. Now, there's been a lot of discussion online about how unfair it is that Niko got voted out first. Oh, it's really unfair. No, it's actually masterful gameplay by the traitors, if I'm being 100% honest. Niko was already suspicious purely because if you know who he is, you know that he could very easily hide being a traitor. We've watched him play Mafia on the Beta Squad channel, and he is exceptional at that game. He's very good at lying. He's very good at deceiving in that scenario. So if people were aware of what he's like outside of the house and how he does do pranks, he plays games with people, he likes to lure them into a full sense of security and things like that, then obviously they're going to think that that could apply to the game. And then there's the added information that a traitor could have been put into the grave with Paloma, and he just happened to be put in there. The traitors utilized people's fear of who he is outside of the house, in terms of this person who is over the top and dramatic but actually is quite withdrawn within the game, I felt like, at least. Whereas they utilized that and made sure that people thought he was a traitor. And despite his argument, they are always going to vote out the person who's in that position, because obviously it could be an eventuality. Now, my argument doesn't really work because I feel like they would have immediately gone for Lucy as well, but I feel like Lucy is just not at all capable of being a traitor in the nicest way possible. I don't think she's capable. So therefore, when she's doing all of this stuff and she's in the grave, I don't think people see her as suspicious as much as they do Niko. We've seen it before where they've systematically worked their way through everybody who's been involved in that situation and voted them out because they could be a traitor. You never know. And whilst I think that is bullshit reasoning, I understand the thinking of, oh, well, we can't keep him around because he might be a traitor because of this situation. So I don't think it was malicious. I just feel like it was a case of, well, we know what you do on the outside world, so therefore you could potentially be a very good traitor on this world. Now, before we head up to the turret, there was a conversation between Claire and Ruth about an alliance that was formed, and I did mention it, I think, in the first episode, or it was shown in the first episode and I wrote a note about it but maybe didn't say it. But Jonathan did say in the car, on the way to the castle, before the game had even started, may I add, that he wants an alliance with Ruth, Claire, and Niko, and I took that as him just trying to be friendly towards 2 people who aren't properly in the celebrity world, who probably don't have many friends on the show that they can spend time with or buddy up with or things like that, and he was just extending an olive branch. I didn't take it seriously as like, let's form an alliance, we have to stick together no matter the cost. And Ruth clearly did, and started to be like, oh, maybe Jonathan's a traitor because he didn't stick with the alliance. And I was thinking, he made that alliance before he even started the game. Like, what are you talking about? And we're going to talk more about Ruth, because Ruth was really pissing me off in this episode with not the fact that she'd absolutely called out Jonathan and she's 100% correct, but the reasons as to why she was calling him out just seemed pathetic, is the word I would use. And I don't use that word lightly, but know what you're doing, right? Know what you're doing, Ruth. You're playing a game. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So up in the turret, obviously, Kat fortunately had listened into conversations involving both Alan and Jonathan's name being brought up by Claire and Ruth. And so obviously they were like, oh, who should we kill tonight? And I was like, interesting. The people that they were umming and ahhing about were Claire, Joe Wilkinson, and Tom Daly. And I was thinking, I don't think any of these are the smart people. I think Ruth is the smart person to get rid of. You have to get rid of her. She's going to cause a lot of trouble in the future if she's able to start spreading this Jonathan sort of target that she's got on him. And I feel like they just might have made a little bit of a misstep here. We'll talk about who they killed in a second, but I don't know if I would have gone with who they picked. So, at breakfast, it was revealed that Tom Daly was dead. Dead, gone, banished. Not banished, he died. So, yeah, bye-bye, Tom Daly. They did manage to sneak in a shower shot of him before he left, so at least it was worth that. But equally, he has gone. I'm a bit disappointed, purely because from an entertainment point of view, I feel like he had so much more to give. And I also feel like the reason they got rid of him was because he was starting to turn people onto his opinions. But equally, they were wrong opinions. He thinks it's Kate and Claire. It's not Kate and Claire. So why would you not keep him around to keep perpetuating that narrative? And then when they get rid of another person that's clearly wrong, then they can be like, Tom, that's strange, isn't it? And Tom could get himself banished. It's one of those things that I'm just sort of like, it's one of those things where I'm like, it didn't really make sense for anybody's game to get rid of Tom Daly, purely because it hasn't changed the game in any drastic way for the traitors. It's caused chaos, yes, but not the kind of chaos that they want. And that's what I was a little bit like, about. Yeah, I don't think that Tom should have been murdered. I think out of the three of them, if you wanted to go for a shocking one, you should have gone for Joe Wilkinson, and even then, Tom Daly would have been my last pick out of the three, purely because he's being so loud and so wrong at the same time, and you need those kind of people to stay in the castle to keep shouting over the people who are being correct with their assumptions. So the mission in this episode was actually a really entertaining watch. I have to say, they really upped the fact that these missions are exciting to watch now. In the first series and even in the second series, they kind of felt a little surplus to requirements, like they were almost doing it just for the chance of maybe getting a shield. But now that the shields are available in the mission, it makes it so much more exciting to watch them go out of their way to try and get a shield, so that they have a shield and they don't have to, we might get a shield. We might get a shield if we go in and we lift up a box. Oh, we might get one. No, you've actually got to go out of your way and be obvious about getting a shield. And I think that's really good. There was too many times when people were playing the whole, wow, we're all protected because nobody knows who has the shield. And I just got a bit bored with that. But now that people know who have the shield or don't know, it creates a lot more mystery and a lot more intrigue. So the idea was they were all chained to the middle and Claudia comes in. Celia farted, which was a highlight of the episode. Genuinely hysterical. I've not laughed that much in a long time. And watching Claudia just break character was so magical, because normally she's so in it, and then sometimes when she breaks character it's so funny. But the challenge was essentially they unlocked people first, they go outside, then their actions outside had impacts on the inside. So Stephen, Nick, Mark and Kat went out first, and they were like trying to fill up a water pump, which then set off the sprinklers in the cabin, and then they were doing something else and it was causing like sparks to fly in the room, which I thought with water around that's kind of dangerous, but equally it was all safe apparently. And then the last one, there was like stinky feathers that were falling from the sky and gagging everybody out, so that was really funny. But they managed to do the mission in a relatively quick time. I have to say I was quite impressed. And then obviously it became a game of who can get the shields, and I was like, oh, this is very interesting. This is very interesting indeed, because not only are you trying to find the shields in front of everybody, but they were very obvious about who found them. Claire and Mark both found the shields, so they're safe from murder tonight, which is a real shame, because I feel like Claire would have been a target tonight if it hadn't have been for the fact that she had a shield. So Yeah, very interesting. Mark has obviously been very upfront about the fact that he thinks it's Tameka, and fair and valid. If you think that, you got to go with your gut. But Tameka's like, isn't it interesting that both times when there's been a murder, he's been watching other people's reactions rather than reacting himself? Almost like he's known that other people are not going to be coming back or they're going to be murdered, and he's just watching other people to have that guise of, oh, I've been watching other people's reactions to the murders. And I thought that's a good point. Incorrect, obviously, because Mark and Tameka are both faithful, but I love the way that people's minds work when it comes to trying to suss out the traitors. They come up with literally the most ridiculous things in the world, and they just are like, oh, must be him. Must be him because of this. There was a really endearing moment where Celia was sat with a group of people, and then she got up and she was like, I think I'm going to go snoop on another group of people, and then slinked out of the room. And then she slinked into the kitchen and she went, oh, I'm just here to snoop on some conversations. And Alan Carr looked at her and went, you do realise you're not meant to say that you're snooping when you're actually snooping. Like, you've broken the first law of Snoop School. And I thought, yeah, that's actually really funny. That was a really, really funny moment. Celia is genuinely such a national treasure. She's such a brilliant person to have on this show, and I'm loving every single second that I get with her. This round table was genuinely one of the most chaotic and crazy round tables that I've ever watched, purely because I'm fairly certain every single person around that table was called out and was called suspicious at some point. Genuinely, didn't expect it. I really did not expect it to be as crazy as it was, because it led to one of the most nerve-wracking voting times I've ever seen in my whole life. Like, genuinely, I was on the edge of my seat watching, and that is exactly what this show should be doing. This show is absolutely sensational, and it's at its best when it's having moments that make you gasp because of how amazing they are. Okay, so let's talk about the round table. Ruth started by basically going, hey, we all need to put our big boy pants on, we need to grow some balls, and we need to actually start accusing people and saying what's on our mind rather than just following herd mentality. And I do agree with her. This game is very, very sort of unique in the fact that it's so easy to fall into herd mentality. As long as it's not me, is kind of the idea of banishment. It's kind of how, like, Sandra approaches Survivor. If you get the reference, you'll understand. But it's just unique to me how good this game is when you've got people just targeting each other and not everybody is on the same page. Then we had Celia speaking up and basically going, hey, I've been looking around the castle, I've been snooping, guys, I've been snooping, and I've been looking not at who talks to each other, but who doesn't talk to each other. And Kat, you don't talk, and I was very nervous about who she was going to say, to Charlotte, and I was like, oh, thank God, oh, thank God. But Kat did get called out, and I was a little bit like, ooh, how's she going to handle this? And Kat did handle it quite well, sort of let it slide off her back, let it chill, and I was like, you know what, fair game, she did kind of smash this. So then other people started to pick out Celia and go, hey, after the vote, this was Tameka that said this, by the way, after the vote, you slinked into that bar and had a drink with a big grin on your face, like you'd just gotten the role that you wanted. So what's that all about? And then Alan chimed in and was like, yeah, I feel like this whole thing is kind of deflecting from the fact that you might be a traitor. I was a little bit like, Alan, I probably wouldn't have spoken up there, but you know what? Go for it. Let's try and pin it on Celia Imrie, am I right? Surely she's got to be it. And I thought, this is a little bit of a piss poor excuse, but equally, I mean, you got to do what you got to do at the end of the day. The round table is tough enough as it is. And when you got people coming at you from all angles, you might as well throw a name out. Do you know what I mean? And I'm glad that Alan is kind of standing up and being like, yeah, Celia, do you know what? Actually, I do think this. Because it's so easy to just sit back and have no opinions at the round table when you're a traitor. But actually, sometimes you just got to jump on a bandwagon and give your thoughts on the situation. So then the heat went on to Alan Carr, and I was a little bit like, uh-oh, how's he going to handle this? I was really, really, really nervous about this because I wasn't sure how he'd stand up under scrutiny. But Claire basically said, I've been thinking about who's the least likely person to have killed Paloma, and that person would be Alan. And Alan was like, oh, well, I don't know. I wouldn't have killed her. I wouldn't have done that, you know. I don't know. And I was kind of like, I think he's playing off the fact that he is just an innocent faithful well enough to make people not believe that he's a traitor. And I think he's also the kind of person that could say at a round table, oh, guys, I'm a traitor, and everyone would laugh and not believe him. So I do feel like he's in a good position, but I was worried about how he'd deal with it. I don't think he dealt with it incredibly, but I think that he dealt with it enough to make me go, yeah, okay, you're at least safe for the next couple of round tables, I think. So at this point, I was a little bit concerned because I was like, Tameka, why are you piping up about Mark? Just don't even go there because it's gonna look bad on you. But she did go there, and she decided to call him out for distancing himself twice from the group in order to look at people's reactions. And she said that she was watching him for a reaction and he gave no reaction, as if he knew that the person not coming back was not coming back at all. And then obviously Nick then piled on to Tameka, as did Mark, as did Charlotte, and they were all sort of like, hey, we think it's you, etc, etc. And I was just like, oh no, oh, this is so difficult to watch because I know it's not Tameka and I don't think she's doing anything wrong, but I feel like because Mark was on her in the last episode, she's almost got too defensive and she's trying too hard to prove her innocence by deflecting it back to Mark, when I don't actually think she believes it is Mark. I think she's just trying to get him out before he can get her out. And that isn't a good strategy at the round table in the Traitors, because it does just come across as you're guilty. And then we come to the crowning moment of the night, and I loved this. This was a conversation that Joe Marler and Joe Wilkinson had before the round table. Unfortunately, they brought it up at the round table. Now, they are thinking from a producer standpoint. It really does help when you're a celebrity to know how producers work, to know how reality shows work, to be able to look at something and go, hey, why would they pick this person to be a traitor? And their theory was, there are two big dogs in this room, Stephen Fry, Jonathan Ross. First of all, apparently there's 4 years difference in them, but about 40 years look difference, which is crazy to me. Stephen Fry looks so much older than Jonathan Ross. I don't know whether Jonathan Ross has work done or whatever, but Stephen Fry looks his age, whereas Jonathan Ross doesn't. So anyway, moving on from that, that was my little side note. I genuinely think they are so smart to have picked this out because obviously Stephen Fry's the faithful and he's the leader of the faithfuls is what the producers would think, and Jonathan Ross would be the leader of the traitors. And I actually think that they tapped into the producer's mind so well, but they were sort of non-committal and being like, oh, I don't know which way round it is. Is Jonathan the leader of the faithfuls or is he the leader of the traitors? Same vice versa for Stephen. And I was like, oh guys, you're so close. Then Ruth decided to jump onto Jonathan about the whole alliance thing, and he did deny it, like point blank, like, I didn't say there was an alliance, what are you talking about? And then Claire was like, no, you did use that word. And he went, oh, did I? Oh, okay, fairs. And then she called him out for being a game player. It gives me the vibes that you're a game player. Bestie, are you not playing a game? Is this not a game? Is this not a game show? Are you not playing a game currently? Do you think that we're actually murdering and banishing people? You think this is real life? No, this is a game. So calling somebody a game player when they're playing a game makes you look like an idiot. And listen, Ruth, I think you're a lovely, lovely person, don't get me wrong, but you mugged yourself off at that round table. You're completely correct. But when you're calling somebody out for being a game player and that makes you a traitor, everybody here is playing a game. Surely everybody is. And if you're not, then that's concerning. Surely you're playing a game because you're speaking up at the round table. If you were just sat quiet and doing nothing all day, then I could be like, yeah, fair enough, you're not a game player. But you're calling people out. You literally said at the start, people need to stop having no opinion. Having an opinion is playing the game. I don't understand your logic here, Ruth. I really don't understand your logic. So, for me, there is not much more I can say on this matter that isn't just, I don't think you should play this game if you think that way. Do you know what I mean? So the vote was as follows. And when I tell you this was a crazy vote, this is the craziest vote I've ever seen in my whole life. It was amazing. Joe Marler has voted for Kate. Lucy voted for David. Kat voted for Stephen. Stephen voted for Charlotte. Joe W voted for Jonathan. Celia voted for Kat. Jonathan voted for Ruth. Charlotte voted for Tameka. Claire voted for Alan. We're 9 people in and nobody has got a second vote. How mental is that? Then we go on. David voted for Stephen. Nick voted for Tameka. Ruth voted for Jonathan. Tameka voted for Celia. Alan voted for Celia. Matt voted for Tameka. And Kate also voted for Tameka. So with a quarter of the votes, only 4 out of 16 votes, Tameka was banished. I could not believe it. I genuinely couldn't believe it. I think a lot of people online are doing like the whole, oh, look at the first 2 people banished from the show. Says a lot about the celebrities, doesn't it? No. I think you could maybe make that argument for Niko because the majority did vote for him. But it was a very, very vast minority of people that voted for this person. Do you know what I mean? For Tameka. And everybody else either had 2, 3, 1 votes. There was 9 people. No, in fact, I think there was 10 different people around that table that got a vote. So therefore, I find the argument completely null and void in my opinion. But that's just my opinion at the end of the day. Anyway, that is it for the episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed this extended look at last night's Traitor episode. Oh my god, it's incredible. I loved it so much. I'm loving this series. I'm rooting for Alan Carr because I actually think he might have it in the bag. But either way, hope you guys have enjoyed and make sure to keep on ranting and I'll see you guys later. Bye now. See ya.